Hi, everybody. It's January 11th, 2024, and this is the weekly Backdrop Developer Meeting. We get together every week to talk about development priorities for the Backdrop CMS project. It's an exciting week coming up. We've got the Backdrop 127 release coming out in just 4 days, and so we'll use this meeting to talk about any kind of last-minute things that we'd like to get completed before that release. My name is Nate Lampton. I'm Quick Sketch on the internet. I'm core committer and technical lead for the Backdrop project. We'll do some introductions of the group that we've got together for today. We'll start with Luke, and then we'll go to Joseph.
Folks, I'm Luke McCormick. I'm a web manager of various types in San Ramon, California. And I can be found on various forums as Cellear.
Okay, thanks, Luke. Joseph, and then Ismies.
I am Joseph. I'm a developer from Las Vegas, Nevada, and also a core committer. And yeah, I'm just here to see what else going on ahead of the release.
Great. Ismies, if you're available.
Hi, I'm Izzy. Ismi's on the net, and I like Drupal, but I like Backdrop better. Thanks.
Hey, Izzy. Thanks for being here, and welcome to the meetings. It's great to see some new faces. Or new voices, I should say. All right, we're going to go to Robert and then Wilbur.
I'm Robert Lang, bug folder on the internet, coming to you from Altadena, California.
Thanks, Robert. Wilbur and then Jen.
Hi, my name's Wilbur Ince. I'm from Minneapolis, Minnesota, USA. I run the weekly Backdrop office hours, and happy to report that this week we had a flurry of activity. Also, last week was busy with a number of topics and new people stopping by. So if that means that 2024 is the year of Backdrop, it's happening. So.
Great. Jen, are you available?
I am Jen Lampton, joining from Oakland, California. That's it.
Okay. Let's see. I'm looking at the agenda, Jen, which is mostly empty for this week. Do we have any contrib updates that we're ready to talk about? I was directed at Jen, but I'm not sure.
I'm checking.
Okay. Okay. We can circle back to that. Yeah, as I was saying, in 4 days, it's the release of Backdrop 127. Luke mentioned before the meeting they'd like to get a head start on marketing for that release, which would be great. Have you taken a look at the release notes for the preview release, Luke, by chance?
I have not yet. But obviously,
Yeah.
my first step.
Let me get that pulled up. Let's see here. I'll share my screen. Let me get Slack taken down so I don't embarrass anybody. Okay. All right, so here we go. Sorry, I know that you're just seeing my text editor. 1 second, I'm having a little trouble getting Firefox to cooperate. There we go. Okay. So yeah, under the Backdrop project, under releases, we've got the 127 preview, pre-release here. For the most part, the biggest, well, the really big thing is the new CKEditor 5 module. We still have a little bit of work to do there. We have a blog post kind of under news, no, news, not Muse. Here we go. Kind of summarizing the upgrade process for CKEditor 5. Cross-linking to this would definitely be, advisable in our blog post for the 127 release. We also still have a little bit of work to do as far as making a couple more change records. for the conversion process, like just what the difference is between 4 and 5, more developer-oriented discussion, like the way that front-end style sheets need to be added to the editor. There's some differences there. But for the most part, because we're not forcing people onto CKEditor 5, I predict that it'll be relatively low drama. People moving from 126 to 127. CKEditor 4 remains in core and doesn't have any changes in it. There are a couple of changes as far as like what shows up on the status report saying that CKEditor 4 is deprecated and maybe you should try out CKEditor 5. But functionally and for your front end users, there's not going to be any difference between 126 and 127 unless you choose to make the jump to CKEditor 5. Let's see. We've got some telemetry changes. This is a super minor feature, making the mobile menu text configurable. That's like, let's see. Oh, I don't have my Backdrop site turned on. I'll get that turned on. That's this
It
little.
ironically was a feature I looked for this week. I asked a question at office hours about like, so how do you change that text?
Yeah, this little
Oh,
word that says menu right here. Yeah, you can change it now.
So it's in the upcoming release. I'm like, no, you're just pulling my leg about that, right?
Yeah, in 4 days it'll be available.
Exactly.
You can also set it to an empty string and then it'll just show nothing. And you'll just have your hamburger menu.
Let's see, we've also got user account compare visibility rule. That allows you to take a block and then, hang on, now I've got my dev site up. So you can take a block like this card, for example. Oops, that wasn't quite what I thought it was. Here we go, like this block. Seeing if I actually have if I'm using the latest version. I am not, and so it's not there. Okay. I switched branches. Now we're gonna try it now. Okay, so take a block, configure under visibility conditions. Here we go. Oh, nope, still not there. Oh, I know why. Because I'm being silly. So we need a layout that has more than one user to compare against. So like, let's say you have like a profile page, user profile, and that's a user/%. Here we go. Now on any block, you can go to visibility conditions. There we go. And so now there's this user account compare. And so you can compare between the logged in user and a user account from the URL. And that makes it so that you can say like, create like a custom version of your profile page for what you see versus what anonymous people or other people see. You could also apply it to the whole layout if you wanted to have a user's profile page be like entirely different with an entirely different layout. You could do that as well. Let's see. Content link to just output the URL. That's pretty simple. Just a formatter for views. And then an API change to make it so you can specify attributes on divs. Also, I mean, so these are quote new features, but some of the miscellaneous changes I find to be fun and neat. Finally, the Grippy is dead. I'm so excited about the death of the Grippy. This is issue 340. So on backdropcms.org, let's see if I can find a Grippy. It might be under Oh, we don't have, oh, here we go. Yeah, this is the Grippy. That is like a JavaScript enhancement that's been in Drupal and Backdrop. It's been in Drupal, or it's been in Backdrop for the entire history of the project, but it was inherited from Drupal 7. But almost, well, not almost, every browser in existence now provides this Grippy that's over here on the right-hand side by default on all text areas. So it's totally redundant with this one. And in Backdrop 127 now, that Grippy is removed. Let's see. Don't think. Oh, here we go. I've got one. But we also like support it better, where it's like you can see like the default browser behavior lets you go like widthwise as well as up and down, and that just ends up with some weirdness on forms like this. But now we're properly setting the CSS property so that like you can go up and down, but you can't go left and right unless you specify in the pound resizable property to say both. Then that will allow horizontal as well as vertical. But by default, if you say resizable equals true, it maintains the previous behavior of just making it resizable vertically, not horizontally. So yes, the death of the Grippy. Very excited about that.
So can I phrase that as removal of the redundant Grippy? Because
Yes.
having a Grippy is like super useful, really necessary, but just having two Grippies, one of which is only partial functionality, is the thing that we're getting rid of now, right?
Yep. Yeah, we're switching to the browser-based Grippy. Since all browsers provide this functionality, we're just using the native behavior now.
How was the previous script? The previous Grippy is done with like a bunch of fancy JavaScript that's thrown in there.
Yep. I think it was textarea.js. That whole file has been deleted now.
I'll try to give it a nice eulogy. I mean, it served its purpose well for all these years until we don't need it anymore.
Let's see. The text format filtered HTML was renamed to basic. So let's see. Yeah, so excuse my test content or thing. But yeah, so there's the basic text format, and then there's the raw HTML text format out of the box now instead of filtered HTML. That's just a label change. Internet Explorer support has fully been dropped for Internet Explorer, all versions. So this issue 214 was actually about removing Internet Explorer 8 support, but we kind of dilly-dallied on that issue so long that literally all of Internet Explorer, including IE 11, has been completely unsupported by Microsoft for a couple of years now. And so this issue 214 removed support for conditional comments, and it removed the HTML5 shim that was IE8 specific. So in truth, we really only kind of removed the IE8 specific code because we didn't really have any other IE, like newer versions of IE. We didn't have any specific core workarounds in the first place. So all of that has been removed. Also, something that happened after the preview release that that isn't in these notes is we also removed hundreds of vendor prefixes in our CSS. So the end of like -webkit, -moz, -ms CSS selectors, especially for things like border radius and shadow and stuff like that. Stuff that has been fully supported by CSS across all browsers for more than 8 years. So yeah, getting in a lot of nice little cleanup there. And then these other things are just like making Ciki-Editor the default editor for new sites and some more status report changes.
Are you saying removing all those hundreds of things isn't even in the release notes here?
Well, it's not in the release notes because it happened after the preview release. So there are some things that aren't in the preview release that we've been working on in the last 10 days. So the release notes aren't quite comprehensive. There'll be like a, 10 or so more changes by the time 127 actually comes out. Let me see.
I love that dropping. So that means that the default view source view is now a lot cleaner, right?
Yeah,
Yeah. This is actually one of an Izzy issue. And Izzy, sorry, I actually didn't even notice that that you've been active in the issue queue because your handle is very, very similar to another member of the backdrop community, and so I thought you two were the same people, but that's excellent.
I was going to say that was the other thing is that with taking those out, it's going to make the developer tools window much cleaner.
Yeah. So let's take a look at
Yeah.
the source here for this. So 47 files changed. Yeah. See, this is the kind of stuff that we're getting rid of. Yeah.
like we would have 3 or 4 basically identical versions of a single property.
Yep. Yeah,
I'm
look
just
at this
getting rid of all
mess.
those.
Oh, that's
And
great.
some of them are exceptionally messy. Here we go. Linear gradients, for example. Yeah. Now fully supported across all browsers. Also, there's some animation stuff in here that also was like just incredibly crazy. Maybe not this one, but yeah. So it used to be they had these funny things for like keyframes. You had WebKit keyframes. Yeah.
Yeah, I think you're underselling how much of an improvement this is, because
Oh yeah, yeah.
people building sites, don't know all the rules going in, so they kind of think about what to do by viewing source and taking that, and like they don't know that these things aren't needed. So we're saving kind of beginner themers like huge amounts of time from not worrying about stuff that they shouldn't have been worrying about in the first place, but just didn't know that.
Yeah, the amount of work that's gone into that is definitely evident when you look at the diff there. And Luke, you're right. It's a huge cleanup and improvement.
Yeah.
What else can we get rid of?
Well, I'll say one thing we didn't get rid of is we didn't get rid of the Flexbox browser-specific workarounds. I think that although those are probably safe to remove as well, we were kind of angling for the stuff that's like only the super duper safe stuff should be removed, and so that's stuff that was 8 or more years, like fully supported. Really, our overall browser support strategy is vague. That we don't really have a like, most 2 recent releases of a browser or anything like that. Well, wait, I think we do have a strategy of something. I'm gonna have to look at it now. It's like less than 1% or something like that, according to browser market share. I think that's actually our target, but I can't remember off the top of my head what our policy is.
Which
Jen?
website do you check for that?
Um,
Like normally I look at Can I Use,
mhm.
but I don't know if there's a better one.
Can I Use is excellent. It didn't used to have the capabilities that it has now. That's what we used for this for the removal of these vendor prefixes.
Decades ago, I used to use browserwatch.com, which appears to still exist. I don't know. Is that anything anybody uses?
I don't know.
No, its last update was 13 years ago, so apparently not. The site's still there.
Yeah, Can I Use has like it has it broken down by feature, so you can see like 1% of users are using a browser that doesn't support feature X. So that's really helpful. Honestly, it's kind of incredible just how much better cross-browser support for stuff has gotten in the last like 2 years.
Yeah, we're highly spoiled at this point. All right. Yeah, so that's the 127 release. I think that I got through everything there. There are still some more things that we're likely to see. If we take a look at the ready to be committed list, there's a good number of issues in here. So these will all be completed as well. I think all of them, I believe, are in really good shape. There's also, as always, like we also have the oh, I thought that there was something in this milestone. Oh, wait, hang on. I've got a label turned on at the same time. Here we go. So there's also the 126.4 milestone. So stuff in here will also be available in the 127 release. I'm trying to think if there's anything important in here. It doesn't look like any real big items. Okay. So Luke, I'm hoping that little walkthrough might help you with your brainstorming as far as creating some buzz around the 127 release.
Unquestionably helps.
Great. Looks like Jen, you might have gotten the contrib information all together.
We have some exciting new showcases on the website. So I just reviewed them and published them, but there is a public library website and a small business, or I don't know what size, any size business website. It looks like both of them were formerly Drupal 7, so that's exciting. And then we have two new contrib projects. One of them is field collection feeds, and the other one is simplified menu administration.
That's great. And so those new showcase items, are they sorted alpha or by release date on?
They are sorted by promoted followed by release date, but both of them do appear on the showcase landing page if you want to see them.
Cool. So backdropcms.org/showcase or the showcase menu item. Great. Super. All right. Let's see. Other news. We want to state publicly again or reiterate that there was a release of the file entity module for Drupal 7 this past week, this past Wednesday, and Backdrop Core has included the file entity module for several years now as part of Core, but the vulnerability that affected the Contrib project did not affect Backdrop Core, despite our port being our core integration being mostly a port of the file entity project from Drupal 7. Had to do specifically with replacing a file that you could go and edit a file and then you could replace it with another file. And in Drupal 7, there was an issue where you were allowed to replace a file with a different file and the file extension wasn't checked seemingly. So when you replaced a file, you could replace it with whatever you wanted. In Backdrop land, we specifically, I think maybe when we were porting it, we were just like, this doesn't make any sense. And so we changed it at the time that we ported it into the project, that if you upload a file and replace it, you have to replace it with something with the same extension in the first place. So that avoided the problem that Drupal 7 had and required that security release. So lucky break on our side. I guess just good porting, good integration into our core there. Let's see. Only other item we've got for today, some issues that could use some review. Issue 2450 is about admin bar links. This is an oldie. I'll share my screen again just to look at this. So this is from 2017. Jen, you actually filed it while working on issue 315. What's
Yeah,
oh.
just very quickly, this issue is very old, but it's also very simple. There was a regression that came back in several years ago, and then when you get to the bottom, RG Piano has done this PR that has been reviewed and has been the envy of people like Clonus because of the simplicity of his solution. It does make a difference in terms of the depth of the admin bar menu that is displayed and is ready to go.
Great. I'm going to take a look on the sandbox here just to see what the difference is. Oh, this preview's not found. Gotta update. Okay, that'll take a minute for the sandbox to come back.
Yeah, you might have to re-trigger that sandbox because that was back in October, I think, or whatever that was, or December.
So can you walk me through this? Like, here's my local sandbox, where the menu stops.
Well, I think if you go down to like views, I don't know if you go down further, settings like the display modes, you might have to go a bit higher to see ones that go further. Which version are you running on here? Is this the latest?
Yeah, this is this is 1.x, so this will be 127 when it's released.
Right.
But this change hasn't been merged yet, so
I think it's related to the managed display pages, so you might have to go to like manage display on a content type.
okay, so structure, yeah, content types are a nice deep thing. Okay, so manage displays. Okay.
Yeah, so we have sub pages under there that aren't shown, I think.
Got it. Yep. So manage displays, then inside of here, this then goes to default and teaser, but it's not present in the menu.
And if I remember correctly, the actual diff that is applicable at the end is quite simple. I'm sure you'll have no difficulty appreciating it, but in the process of getting created, there had been some stuff that had been removed from the PR, added and removed, and so that can kind of clutter up some views of the patch or the diff. But the consolidated diff is quite simple.
Yep. So here you go. So manage displays. Yeah, previously it only had add display mode, but here we go. We've got overview, default, and teaser. Yep. Cool. It would be this is just getting this patch looks great. Just one consequence of this is that the deeper you go, I think that we still have some issues here with like running off the edge of the page. But I guess this isn't quite small enough yet.
Well, it doesn't actually run off the edge of the page. It flips back on itself.
It reverses back and forth across the page now.
Oh, it sure does.
Yeah, it would be nice if it changed color then, so you knew. But you know, dreamer.
Yeah, it's definitely it's better than I expected.
Yeah, there is another issue with the admin bar. I don't know if it's in the issue queue or not. It was an old Drupal issue, and that is that when you have the admin bar fixed at the top of the screen, some of the vertical menus go so far down that they actually go beyond the browser window, and you can't get to them. So you have to tell it not to stick the bar at the top.
Yeah, that's like views, for example. Or sometimes they'll run off if you've got a smaller
yeah, there
window.
was actually a patch in the Drupal 7 queue that was kind of cute. It almost worked, where it would actually start letting the menu items slide up the screen. So you could actually get to the lower items and still have the menu bar stuck at the top, fixed at the top. maybe I can dig that out sometime and put a reference, but it didn't work well. It was an attempt.
Yeah. Okay. This looks great. Yeah, and as usual, there's just some code cleanup like this. This is unrelated. This is just making our code linting happy. Yeah, looks great. Cool.
What is our policy for merging things that have like spell check stuff that's unrelated to the change? Like if cspell is complaining about other stuff in the file.
Yep. Policy is that spell check and coding standards, unless they're newly added, you don't need to worry about it. So this pull request, for example, might be failing spell check, for example.
Yeah.
Coding standards, spell check. But because the spell check, the spelling errors weren't introduced by this pull request, they were elsewhere in the file, you can ignore the failures there. So policy is don't allow introducing new regressions, but existing regressions, because it checks the entire file. It's not required that you block a pull request based on any failure.
Okay.
It's also we're also a little bit flexible. If somebody goes through and they do fix spelling errors in a pull request, like if RG Piano would have included fixing this kill switch, for example, that would also be fine. We're a little fuzzy on that. We're kind of just slowly but surely resolving all of our spelling errors.
Okay.
kind of randomly, like as we encounter them. Some people prefer to fix the errors just so they get a full clean 100% passing, but it's not required.
Mhm.
We also have an issue just to make it so that spell check doesn't get run on every file that's been touched. Instead, it should really only be on the lines that were changed. But
Okay.
in a way, we're kind of getting some peripheral benefit from doing the full file after all, because people just go around and clean up one file at a time as they get touched, which has been actually kind of beneficial.
But since this one is so short, would it be a good idea to clean that up now so that the future spell check isn't gonna moan?
Maybe if it wasn't already RTBC, I might say that, but usually at this point, like it's frustrating for authors if you come back and mark this as needs work when it's an unrelated change. And so I think for an RTBC issue like this one, we should just leave it as is. We should merge it. And if you want to fix the spelling errors specifically, we can always have another separate pull request for that. Anything that's like small documentation changes or non-functional changes, those move through the issue queue very quickly.
Great, thanks.
Okay. Let's see. Does anyone have any other topics or anything else they'd like to discuss today?
I have a question about the config storage and database issue.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Go for it. Do you have the issue number?
Yeah, hang on one moment. 2277.
Okay, yeah, 2277. Go ahead.
So basically, when I am using the database config, all the tests fail on my local environment, and I was wondering if I have to do something to make the test pass on my environment with it.
Yeah.
Just every test fails.
What I've seen, so if you use my pull request, tests should be able to be run. But before they'll be run, hang on, let me get this right. I think before they can be run, you need to clear the profile cache, because the profile cache includes like a copy of the databases. And if you're
Okay.
running file-based config, but the testing cache is going to be okay. So if you're running a database config, but the profile cache uses a file-based config, then the table is missing that holds the config in the profile cache, and so the tests all fail.
Okay.
But if you clear out the profile cache, then it'll be recreated with the database install, and then it should work. Just as an aside, Joseph, since you've had your hands in the profile cache quite a bit, the general trigger for like use the profile cache or not is not great. That what it does is it checks to see if a database cache or a profile cache table exists, and if it exists, then it says okay, use it. And there's a little checkbox in the simple test UI that says use the profile cache. And if you uncheck that box, it actually doesn't stop using the profile cache when you uncheck the box, because the check for should I use the profile cache says, is there a cache available? If there is, then yes, I'm going to use it. And unchecking that box doesn't actually delete the caches. And so
It just stops them from being created in the first place.
exactly. Yep.
Right.
So you have to go over and clear the cache, clear the testing cache entirely. That deletes the profile cache, and then it will stop using it. So that's just a little gotcha that would be nice if unchecking that box. We should
Like
use that as the like should the cache be used rather than do the tables exist.
Okay.
And maybe we should drop the testing tables too, like when you uncheck that box, because they shouldn't be necessary. That might also just be a nice add-on. I don't think we have an issue for that. It's just
Okay.
something I've noticed, and I'm like, that's a little annoying. Especially with this issue where it's like the profile cache needs to be created with the same config setup, and if you're swapping between the two, it can get confusing.
Okay. I have another issue that I haven't touched in a while related to that profile.
Wait. No, I want to ask about this issue, which might be me completely misunderstanding this. 2277. So this sounds reminiscent of the way Drupal 7 stores its config, right?
Yes.
Yep.
How reminiscent is it? Is it the same thing, or is it like just kind of vaguely related? Like how close is it to?
It's not that close because Drupal 7, first of all, config was stored in a bunch of different tables. You know, like there was the config for content types and the config for fields, and they were all stored in separate database tables. And then there was the variable table as well. What this does is it takes those JSON files that you have in the backdrop files directory that hold your config, and it puts them all into a single database table called active config. But inside of it, it's a one-to-one mapping where what we have right now in JSON files, it puts all in one database table. And so it's convenient from the perspective of when you're doing a site backup, you only need to back up the database again. You don't need to also back up the config, which is a point of confusion for people coming from Drupal 7. And actually all versions of Drupal, because newer versions of Drupal also store by default their config in the database as well. So this makes Backdrop act a little bit more like Drupal 8, 9, 10, 11, and that you can choose to put your config in the database instead. The reason why we're pursuing this is specifically for environment setups like Pantheon, where the file system is not very fast and the database needs to be fast and optimized because it's shared across web servers. So we think that this feature might make running Backdrop on Pantheon sites a much better experience.
Yeah. Also, as a co-maintainer of the backup and migrate module, I definitely welcome this as a enabling thing. Great, thanks for the explanation.
Yeah, and Joseph, you did some benchmarking on this a couple weeks ago. Do you want to summarize what you found? I found it to be interesting.
Yeah, so I didn't like make any charts or hard numbers, but generally my testing was on my local environment where I'm using local file system and local database, so there's no network involved. And the database storage was a bit slower, like a few milliseconds slower than the file storage. But I think if you're not using a distributed file system, the difference is small enough that most people won't notice, I think.
Yeah, it's that that's good actually, because I don't think because we've never had database config before, we didn't actually know for sure which direction that was going to go. It's possible that the database config would have been faster, but I'm not surprised that they're fairly equivalent, and just using the raw files is slightly faster. It's
Mhm.
also a little bit of a relief that that means that decision wasn't a bad one. That I mean, we know Backdrop is quite fast, so we already knew that we weren't making a horrible decision. It just wasn't clear if it was the best decision.
It sounds like a pretty good decision to offer this choice. I can see that it may introduce some questions for the backup migrate module because it has recently added the feature to be able to back up the active config directory. So it will need to know what's going on at this config level to do that or not do that. But I think having the option so that it's stored in the database or in the file is a good option to have. And I like the way you've done that as just a single table with all of the JSON in that. That's a nice solution.
Yeah, it's a good fix. There's a lot of unanswered questions yet about this. Well, first of all, we haven't even merged it yet. This isn't in 127, or it'd be nice if it could get into 128.
Would it
But
be
some,
valuable to put it into the Pantheon upstream before merging it into Backdrop Core?
you mean like fork the run patch on the Pantheon upstream?
Yeah, because that's the only, well, it's the only use case we've heard of for it. And so it would be a perfect place to test it.
So
And because it's optional, people who are on Pantheon could opt into it and we could test it there. I mean, we could do that for our own individual sites, I guess. But I don't know. It seems like a great opportunity for testing before it goes in core. No, okay, never mind. Just an
Were you
idea.
gonna say? Well, I was just waiting for Joseph to say something, so it sounded like he had some
I
thoughts.
actually, our servers, so my dad and I have a bunch of servers and we synchronize all our files across all of them using Gluster. And so this would actually make our sites faster too.
Okay.
Yep. Also, I'm not sure if there's many sites running on Backdrop sites running on Acquia, but Acquia is the same thing where they use Gluster for their file system as well. And Pantheon uses
If they
a
are, it's
proprietary one.
it's underground because they're definitely not allowed to.
It's Greg's site. He's doing it.
Leave it to Clonos to. Oh boy, so much for being secret about it, Jen.
Oh, I don't actually know if he's doing it or not. I just figured if there was any site on Acquia, it was probably his.
Yeah,
Sorry,
right.
Greg, not trying to get you in trouble.
Well, yeah, so a couple of things. First of all, if this were to get in, right now there's no way to transition from file to database or vice versa. Like you can't just turn it on and then have it work. We don't even yet have any migration script available to do that conversion. Maybe we could put something in the scripts directory. Maybe B could provide a command to switch from one to the other. But right now, like switching from one type of config to the other type of config is not really known how to do that.
What about the active and staging and you know, when you're going from dev to production and stuff, that would also have to be taken into account, wouldn't it?
Well, kind of. The staging directory can stay the same as it is with holding files, and then if you want to do an import with B, that would actually still work exactly the same, I think, because B uses Backdrop's APIs for saying, "Hey, run a config import," and the API for running a config import is exactly the same. It's just that where it gets imported to has changed under the hood. So the UI and command line and everything like that for doing an import is identical. An import and an export of the config, it's all the same. It's just that there's no active directory anymore. It's just all in the database.
And you
So
wouldn't actually have the staging in a table as well.
right. There actually is the option to put the staging in a table, but I wouldn't recommend that. Staging, I think, the way that we've been testing it and the way that it's written up right now is intended to be staging is still in files. That way you can manage it with Git, and then only the active is in the database. You could put them both in the database if you wanted to, though. I just don't
That would
think you
make it
get
really
quite as
hard.
much benefit of doing
Yeah,
it that way.
to
Well, for
deploy
somebody that doesn't
things.
use Git at all or doesn't use any kind of version control, I could see maybe
But you
putting.
have to move your database every time you did a deploy. I mean, I guess WordPress people do that. It seems strange for Drupal, but it might not be strange for the rest of the world.
Yeah, well, I see, and some people don't even have the concept of multiple environments or even the concept of deployment, right? And so
Well, I
they're
think
they're
Whoa.
yeah yeah, and so their ideas of how to deploy might be different than ours.
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, good point.
I think your description of having the staging in files and then handling on the import as to whether it's going into the database or to another set of files makes perfectly good sense and has all those benefits you said, like with Git and stuff. So I think it's a good approach.
Yeah, one more thing about the Pantheon upstream. It's kind of been a while now that I've been thinking that maybe we need a new Pantheon upstream. For example, like putting the backdrop install inside of a web directory and moving the config outside of the files directory. Like those would be nice things to do in our Pantheon upstream. And if this were available, we should possibly just make the quote new Pantheon upstream, which doesn't exist, should just use this by default because it's definitely a much more optimized setup for Pantheon specifically. So this change would be kind of a good stimulus for us to consider making a second Pantheon upstream that is like better optimized for Pantheon's capabilities today instead of what Pantheon's capabilities were 10 years ago. Okay, Wilbur, you have something to add?
I'm just going to throw out a quick one that came up when you had the issue with the misspelled words or spelling. Do we have a backdrop specific PHP code sniffer profile? Or do we just use Drupal 7s or?
Yep, we have our own code sniffing profile. It's under a separate repository. It's under
It's
there's
like backdrop ops.
yeah, there's a backdrop ops group on GitHub, and then I think it's PHPCS is the name of the project. So yeah, it's github.com/backdrop-ops/PHPCS. That's where our coding standards repository lives.
Could you throw that in the chat?
Mhm.
And I'll make a note of that.
We
Yeah, so
also have
any
our own C-spell dictionary, right? That we have
yeah,
like,
it's not used yet. We still have a C-spell
okay.
dictionary in core, but yeah, we plan on transitioning to using the C-spell directory from backdrop ops instead.
That might be some fun issues to make sort of massive, kind of big code updates to be put in. So, okay, thanks.
I was finding that link to the code sniffer for Backdrop is really good. It's really good. I think I made some comments about it, but I was happy to find that or be pointed to that last fall.
Yeah, I think there's a couple of there's a couple of open issues in here. It's not trivial modifying these code sniffer rules. I thought that it would be like simple configuration, but turns out it's quite complicated PHP code that controls each one of those things. So I'm glad that we got it separated out. Okay, well, we're out of time for today. Thanks again, everybody, for being here. And thanks for all of the work making a fantastic 127 release. That release is going to be coming out in just 4 days. That'll be Monday next week on the 15th, as always. I don't foresee any delays or anything like that, so we'll just kind of push forward, getting through these last RTBC issues that we can get into the 127 release, and then yeah, we'll be pushing that out on Monday. So another great 4 months of Backdrop development coming to a close.
Thanks very much.
Okay, all right, everybody, have a great day.